What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Lakers Central Pregame Show. I'm Alex. That's Vinay. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show on YouTube. Also, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, wherever you prefer to listen to your podcast. We got a game tonight, Vinay, against the Grizzlies. AD is back. AC is back, man. How are you feeling? And are you feeling confident that we won't go into another overtime game tonight?
I hope so, man, because I don't know what's going to happen, man. I think LeBron's gonna just start cramping up mid game or something like that from exhaustion. Because it's outrageous how many times that this has happened. I think that stat got pushed out since 1991 or something like that. It was the first time we ever had this many games, but that go into overtime. So I genuinely hope that they don't go into overtime. But we'll see. The Lakers' last couple games without Anthony Davis have been very much playing down to their competition. And even the second game against OKC without Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who was basically torching everybody, somehow we struggled to win that game too. Because apparently Kenrick Williams decided to turn into, I don't know, Kobe Bryant, Carmelo Anthony, all the mid-range shots he was making. And I was just like, all right, I don't know what's going on, but that streak of random guy on your team turns into a Hall of Fame player. That it's still there, man. I don't know who's gonna go off tonight for Memphis, but I'm counting on Grayson Allen or somebody like that to hit 7 threes against us or something. Somebody obscure. So I don't know what's gonna happen.
It's crazy, man. Like the Lakers, I don't know. It's teams play above their level. Like they punch above when they play the Lakers. That's always been a thing when they're on national TV. That's always a thing. And then the Lakers, for whatever reason, they've toyed around with these games, man, with these teams, and fortunately they've been winning. But a missed bounce here, or a turnover, or a missed shot, and they could be 1-3 or 1-2 in these overtimes. So look, man, I'm glad we won. Hopefully they've learned their lesson. They probably haven't, but hopefully at least tonight, I'm hoping they jump on the Grizzlies and it's more of a comfortable win. It's nice that Anthony Davis is back. I know he had some issues with his Achilles. Obviously, it's not a torn Achilles or anything like that, but
Right?
I
Yeah.
think I think I had mentioned it coming into this season. It looked like he wasn't 100% right, and I
Yeah.
think LeBron spoke about how AD played with a serious foot injury during the finals. And I think I
hmm
don't know if it was that time when he twisted his ankle or something, and he kept playing. I can't remember exactly when I think that it may have happened, but it looked like this season he wasn't right, and it shows, right? I mean, it clearly
hmm
it shows his production hasn't been there. He hasn't been as dominant. People are looking at him like, what the hell is wrong with AD? But I hope that he's feeling better tonight. And if he needs to sit out more games, let the man sit out more games. So LeBron seems to be able to do all the heavy lifting by himself anyway. So let AD get some rest. All I care about is this team being healthy for the playoffs. Like that's
Yes.
all that matters.
Yeah. I'm going to be very. I'm going to be very. Watching AD's body language real closely tonight just to see because I know the Lakers have been going in overtime, but we've been winning the games, so I didn't feel like there was any rush for AD to come back. So a part of me also thinks that maybe he just needed rest. I think he may have just his body needed a little bit more rest than just the 2 days or the one day in between some of these games. So I'm not surprised that the issue it is. I know exactly when he hurt himself. There, outside of the bruised heel that everybody knows about. I think it was Game 5 was when they wore those. He wore those championship Kobe's, the
Yep.
gold ones or whatever. He had a really really nasty ankle sprain.
Mm-hmm.
The ankle sprain that he had, I was like, I don't know how he played that next game. So when I think after the championship, LeBron said that Anthony Davis's foot was all black and blue or something like that. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was really bad. And if you remember, Game 6, he wasn't doing a ton of stuff offensively, but he was all over the place defensively, blocking shots and stuff like that. But when I saw that ankle turn in Game 5, I was like, this he's going to be out for
Mm-hmm.
a couple months. He's going to have to really really wear it off. And I think the quick turnaround, his ankle probably hasn't healed up properly, and I wouldn't be surprised if the calf issues, the ankle, the Achilles, all that stuff. That's because his body's trying to compensate for whatever
Yep.
pain was or whatever inflammation is still going on with his ankle. So my thing personally is that he should really take all the time that he wants or that he needs to be healthy. But at the same time, like I trust the Lakers medical staff. I don't think they'll rush him back if it's against the
Yeah.
benefit of their health. I don't think it's the same thing with like Caruso. You know,
Hmm.
like they play Caruso and then magically they like I didn't even know like what happened to Caruso, but for him not to play, I couldn't remember.
Hmm.
But like for me, like I could sorry pinpoint it to a specific play like you usually can. So I was just like, all right, Caruso must be nagging something that keeps reoccurring, and that's why he has to sit out some of these games from time to time. So that's why I didn't think too much of it in regards to it. But I'll be monitoring his like body language. What does his lift look like? Like
Right.
because usually when he comes on his first game back, even when it's like even when it's only a 1 game break, he's kind of like more facilitating and working himself back into conditioning and stuff like that. And I don't know how much rest you really get if he was having an Achilles issue. So it's just gotta wait and see. I won't be surprised if he comes out looking flat.
Yeah.
Um, I hope if he's looking flat, Vogel pulls him out the game, and just says, "All right, we got you your 10 minutes of cardio or whatever, and it's cool. You can rest."
Right.
Same thing with LeBron. Like I don't want him taxing any of these guys too much. LeBron knows his body better than anybody else, so I don't think he'll overstress himself as it is. But it's good to have him back. I'll say
Hmm.
that. I thought it was interesting that Vogel said that they're running only a 10-man rotation, and that West was going to be part of that rotation, especially after Markeith's comments in the post game of the
Hmm.
last game. So I'm hoping that if the Lakers play the way that they're supposed to, we get like a double-digit lead, like a 15-point lead, and guys like Markeith and all these other guys can, you know, like they can get some minutes because that would be nice. We haven't had a game like that yet, or in a while at least, where the Lakers have had a handy lead, or like a big lead, and we've been able to kind of empty the bench out, at least for some stretch of basketball. So I don't know if it's going to happen against Memphis, but we'll see.
I mean, so I'm actually glad this is the game that they've decided to bring him back because the next game is against the Nuggets. And coincidentally, that's the last time we blew a team out when we played the Nuggets on February 4th. We beat them by 19. Um, and so if this is kind of like, the Grizzlies are a bit of weaker competition relative to the Nuggets, you see how AD looks, to see if
Mm-hmm.
he gets winded, kind of give him a little bit of burn. That way he's ready for this game against the Nuggets. And I'm sure during that game, we're going to get inundated with the Jokic MVP conversation. That's as I've checked in on Twitter these last few days.
Oh
There's been a
yes.
lot of talk around the whole Jokic thing. And frankly, when we played the Nuggets on the fourth, Jokic did not look like an MVP candidate against the Lakers.
No, he
Lakers just
didn't.
dominated him. And so yeah, I'm not mad about this game. Now, what I'm hoping happens is this isn't a close one and we go down to the wire or there's another
Mm-hmm.
overtime. The Lakers need to wrap this thing up, man. There's no excuse for them not to be able to beat the Grizzlies by double digits. But again,
Yeah.
it depends. I mean, their margin for victory these last 3 games, the Pistons, of course, the Pistons did beat the Nets. So the Pistons is not like they're a terrible team. Any of these teams can get hot, but to go in overtime against the Pistons, the Thunder twice. Shea Gillis didn't play in the second those games. Lakers need to wrap this thing up, man, and keep it moving and get ready for Denver. Frankly, like they've got Denver, then they've got the Timberwolves, and then the Nets, right? And the Nets game is when everybody is gonna really be tuned into this team. So just get
Mm-hmm.
healthy. That's all that matters.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the Lakers sort of manage themselves because Denver is going to be a very competitive environment, whereas Minnesota, we know, is one of the worst teams in the league.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not too hard to score on them and stuff like that. So the reason why I always think those kind of games are like trap games is because we may not see we not Lakers may still beat like a team like the Wolves,
Yep.
like they should beat like a team like the Grizzlies. But if they're looking too far ahead, I have seen some folks say that, hey, this could be a possible trap game or something like that. When it comes to it, like I don't know, like is this a trap game? Maybe, maybe not. Um, but really, it's the theme's still going to be exactly the same as like we've had all season. We want to see like incremental improvements, like as the team kind of continues. Like Taylor Horton Tucker didn't have that great of a game last game. West was more effective. Markeith was more effective. Um, So I'm hoping that he has a better game this time. Whatever mistakes he was making or issues he was having, hopefully he's able to kind of do it because Memphis is typically it is a younger team. They do like to get up and down the court a little bit more. They have feisty, aggressive defenders and all that kind of stuff. So that's sort of the way that I that's sort of the way that I look at it. We want to see them bounce. We want to see the guys that didn't do well in the past couple games bounce back from it. Like Schroeder, I don't know if you caught that again. Like Schroeder was shorting all of his jumpers
Oh
last
yeah.
game.
Yep.
OKC was trying to do the same thing that they did in the first matchup, which was they were trying to speed the pace of the game up so it would gas the Lakers out towards the late game. And all of the Lakers were missing all their threes in the first game with OKC. The second one, they were a little bit better. But Schroeder was still kind of shorting some shots and stuff like that. And him making adjustments and stuff like that and helping take over in the late game was important. Hopefully, Anthony Davis just being on the court, even in those staggered minutes with against LeBron and stuff like that, that'll at least keep the attention of the defense enough that the other guys can sort of work off of it and stuff like that. Because I think that's part of the reason why LeBron was probably getting a little not tired, but managing himself a little bit more. He didn't have anybody else to really absorb the defense or absorb the attention of the defenses before. So that's what I'm hoping. If worst case scenario, Anthony Davis is just being a decoy for us, like on the offensive end, and just grabbing rebounds, playing defense, doing his cardio as he gets back into his routine, I'm fine with that. If that means that everybody else is scoring and stuff like that. But I hope the guys don't look at Anthony Davis and go, "Oh, we got him back, so just give it to him every single play, give it to him every single time." No, just play Laker basketball. Anthony Davis will find a way to fit himself in to the way that we go if he feels like he's ready.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Schroeder shorting those threes because I definitely noticed that. And the Lakers as a team, their 3-point shooting has come down to earth a bit, man. So, I mean, they're 13th in NBA right now. I think they're shooting 37.1% from three. So, look, 13th for the Lakers relative to where they've been historically is great. Middle of the road Lakers shooting 3-point team is great. But they were one of the top teams in NBA for a good stretch of the season. And so what you've seen now is offensively they come down to earth a little bit. I think they're 10th in offensive rating. But defensively, they're still the best defensive team in the NBA. They've been that way now for 2 seasons running. And I think that's how they're winning some of these games by getting key stops. But that 3-point shooting that they relied on earlier, especially when Anthony Davis wasn't all-world Anthony Davis, either they need to pick the 3-point shooting back up or hopefully AD turns back into AD sooner rather than later. Because LeBron does a lot of heavy lifting. And in his 18th season, the dude's still able to basically will his team to wins. But what I don't want to see happen is, as AD tries to get himself healthy, the Lakers rely too heavily on LeBron, and that wears him down. Not that LeBron doesn't know his own body, because clearly the man does, but it's too, what are we, a little over a third of the season, I think, through so far. It's too early for them to be relying on LeBron to win all these games this early. They need to figure something out. And I don't know. I haven't been paying enough attention recently to figure out where the gaps are at, but I did notice before I even looked at these stats, I was just like, they're missing a ton of threes. KCP's not shooting the way he was. Caruso's not. It's not that Schroeder's a great 3-point shooter anyway, but he hesitates on those threes, and I think it throws the offense off at times. But they got to pick that back up.
Yeah, and what I saw at the end of some of these games was especially this last overtime game. If you take a look at I rewatched it. I think the Lakers took 8 or 9 shots in that overtime game. LeBron took 1. He didn't take any more than 1. It was the one shot that I think Lou Dort was playing defense on. It was all over Bleacher Report, oh, look at Lou Dort's defense. He was putting his hands like this all over LeBron, trying to block LeBron's vision and stuff like that, which was good defense. But that overtime, LeBron was full on facilitator. LeBron, the 3-pointer that he set up with Wes Matthews, he wasn't even if you watch that play, he wasn't even looking to try and score a layup. He knew that if he drove to the rim, he would draw at least Wes's defender over or something like that, because that's typically where the help side comes from. And so he had that. He had a play where he set up, I want to say, Schroeder for a back cut for a layup. There was a play where Schroeder actually gave the ball. Schroeder had the ball in the wing, and LeBron had an isolation against Lou Dort at the top of the key, and it was fully spaced out.
Mm-hmm.
And Montrez had a mismatch on Darius Baisley, or Basley, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but and Schroeder actually gave it to LeBron. He tried to send it back up to the top of the key to LeBron. LeBron automatic, like he immediately sent it back to Schroeder and points at Montrez saying, no, give it to him and let him take that isolation matchup. Could LeBron take on Lou Dort? For sure. But if he's tired and Lou Dort is like an all defensive caliber defender, he probably doesn't want to like expend energy to try and do that. And he made that game tying like three, but even he was kind of a little off on his threes, on his pull up threes that night and stuff like that too as well. And that you could tell it's just tired legs and stuff like that too as well. So that sort of stuff is good to see from LeBron, because he's basically forcing his teammates like, yo, like you guys need to start, like, you don't need me to save you guys from these sort of situations. You're more than capable of doing it yourself. And so I think that's good, because that's something that you need to like you didn't have to do that with Rondo, right? Like as much as we kind of, as Laker fans, we were irritated with Rondo's decision making. Rondo didn't lack any confidence when it came to his playmaking, right? He genuinely believed that he could make the right play or make the shot when the time came, or make the right decision. And we saw at times where he would try and do stuff devoid, like without waiting for LeBron. He would try and go early with Anthony Davis and stuff like that. So it's been a different experience, I think, with Schroeder, because Schroeder knows what the hierarchy of the Lakers is. So he's not going to, start chucking up shots in the late game. And I think LeBron's trying to get these guys to understand. Like Montrez doesn't lack any confidence. So if you give it to him, he's going to try and score every time. But I think Schroeder still doesn't realize that, like, these guys trust you. Like if you take a layup and you get blocked or you have a turnover, it's fine. Like it's okay. And I think that's because he's played in, he's played in the playoffs, but he hasn't played high stakes basketball next to LeBron James. It's a different thing, even in the regular season. And so I think he's learning that. So I think over time that'll get a little bit better. And I really won't be surprised if when the latter parts of the schedule come out, if the Lakers build up a good enough lead where they know that they have like a 1 seed or a 2 seed, and they can, LeBron can sit out a couple games, I think that's when they'll do it. It's very similar to what happened last season. They were winning so much early on. We had the luxury of punting games. We didn't have to do anything. And when we went in the bubble, we won our first 2 games or first 3 games. And as soon as we locked up the 1 seed, Lakers like, oh, all right, we don't give a crap anymore about winning any of these games. And then that was it. It didn't matter. And I think that, I remember like we were all concerned, like, oh my God, they've lost. They're like 3-5 in the bubble. Like, are they not sharp? Is that? And, obviously they flipped the switch and won the championship. So I think the formula works. Get your reps in early, get your guys up to speed as to what Laker basketball is. And if you do well enough early on, you can let the rest of the guys take a break towards the end. And if the vaccine, if fans aren't allowed in the stadiums and they go back to the bubble environment, 1, 2, 3 seed won't matter. You're going to have to play a tough team to get there. And the Lakers had the gauntlet, apparently, the worst possible matchups all the way until the finals. So, and they did pretty well. So, it's just getting those reps in. So that's what I'm hoping that we continue to see.
Like one of the things I've noticed with this team is, man, like, look, they've won 6 straight, right? And even though they've had 3 straight overtime games, and in some of these games this season, they haven't looked great. They had the second best record in NBA. They're a half game behind the Jazz with the best record. And sometimes you've got to, not sometimes, if you're a championship team, you have to win those ugly games. Like at the end of the season, nobody looks back and says, oh, you went into double overtime against the Thunder. No one cares about that. All that matters is you won, and what adds a win to your record. And that's what's most important. Like, they've been able to do this with the short off season, with Anthony Davis being out, with Caruso being out, with new pieces not being able to practice while you've added all these new guys, and they still have the second best record in the NBA. Like coming into so last season, many people didn't think they would have the 1 seed in the West. Most people thought maybe 3rd or 4th. They would coast. Same with this season. Short off season, they don't need the 1 seed. Maybe they go for a 3rd or 4th, maybe 5th. they've been either one or two in the West their entire year. Really one for most
Mm-hmm.
of the year. So they're winning ugly games. And I see some things in the chat, some folks talking about our defense. Admittedly, so I don't know who said I have to go back and check, but they said we have elite perimeter defense. But frankly, like I said, we've got the best defense in the NBA. And I see some people still complaining about Marc Gasol, about he's not a great rim protector. With Anthony Davis being out and with Marc Gasol not
Mm-hmm.
being the type of rim protector JaVale and Dwight were, Lakers have been number 2 in blocks all season long. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I find that we nitpick, right, when the Lakers don't play the style of basketball or win in the way that we want them to win. Guys,
Mm-hmm.
I can promise you, man, we win 50 games this season or whatever it is, no one's going to care about what these wins look like. All that I care
Yeah.
about, and I think that all most people care about, is them getting some camaraderie together on the court and they making it through this marathon, if you will, healthy. That is all that matters, because I think a healthy Lakers team in the playoffs, I don't know who can. I mean, look, I'm not worried about Denver. The Clippers are still a really good team. They've got 2 stars, but I think they come out the West again if they're healthy.
Yeah, I think the thing that we have to sort of think about is what the Lakers are doing and how they're playing defense in the regular season, um, and just kind of what we think about the rim protection is it is a valid concern, but the strength of this team, or sorry, the team being a better perimeter defending team, uh, is much more important. If you consider what we went through last playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
all 4 teams that we played, maybe not so much Miami, but definitely the first 3 teams that we played, Portland, Houston, and Denver, were all perimeter oriented teams,
Mm-hmm.
right? Jokic is a little bit different because you think of him as a guy who's in the paint. He really wasn't in the paint very much. The times that he did try to go in the paint, the Lakers had a counter with Dwight. But this league in general is becoming very 3-point oriented. It's becoming very perimeter oriented. And one of the things that the Lakers did a good job of, despite not having the very best personnel to do it, was they were really, really good at running people off the line and funneling them to guys like Dwight and JaVale. That was the scheme that it was based on. Well, the difference between last season and this season is the Lakers don't have to funnel guys anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The funneling stuff only happens if like you get blown by, or you genuinely, like, some guys like super hot and you can't defend them at all. Nobody can defend them. This season, I would say that because the perimeter defense is better, I have more confidence of our guys being able to stay in front of the guy that has the ball.
Agreed.
And because the speed of this team on the perimeter is a little bit better with guys like Schroeder, Wes, Kuzma, THT, Caruso, because the speed is better, we're a much better perimeter defensive team. It doesn't matter right now in the regular season because we're seeing all these different teams on a different basis. But I think in the playoffs, it'll make a very, very big difference because it was if we remember what the conversation was about the Lakers last season,
Mm-hmm.
it was obviously on the offensive end, it was like, oh, their spacing isn't good, they're not making threes. But the concern was that the Lakers were going to get torched on the perimeter by all these uber stars that were, the Dame Lillards,
Mm-hmm.
the Jim Hardens, all those guys that are on the team, the Jamal Murrays, those guys. But they survived, or they played well enough. Well,
Right.
this team is even better
Mm-hmm.
personnel wise on the defensive end. Caruso is 1 year more mature. Dennis Schroeder looks like he's an all defensive caliber guard when he needs to be,
Mm-hmm.
especially in late game situations because they just throw him on whoever the hot like perimeter guy is, and all of a sudden that guy just stops scoring altogether, and he'll do it 94 feet. Kuzma's become better. THT, we already know with his long arms, is like a nightmare. He steals the ball and straight up rip it out of people's hands. So right now it doesn't look good, but when we get to the playoffs and we run into teams that are perimeter oriented teams, I think that's when people will see the real value of this team. And I think because the strength of this team is more on the perimeter than it was last season, we're seeing situations like Gasol and Montrez not be able to defend with the same capacity. The Lakers are not trying to create big collisions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're not trying to funnel guys into Dwight's body So he creates a big collision and prevents a layup. Their goal this season is to swarm and stay in front of defense. Containment. You'll hear Frank Vogel say this a lot. Their principles are to move your feet and contain the person that's in front of you.
Yep.
Last season, it was more corralling guys. This season, it's more containment. And we won't see it in the regular season, but I think we will see it in the postseason because we're going to run into those same teams again, right? Like James Harden's on the Nets, but like the Clippers are still somewhat. I think the Clippers 40% of their. I think last time I was checking their year-over-year numbers, but last season the Clippers attempted like 37% of their shots, total shots as a team, were on the perimeter. So they were still like a inside the three-point line team. This season they're up to like 41%. So like a team that was whose identity was like, oh, get to the rim and stuff like that and overwhelm you, they've become a perimeter-oriented team. The Jazz, I think they take like the highest amount of threes in the league, or they're like way up there. They're a perimeter-oriented team. So these teams that we're seeing, like Denver is another team that's a perimeter-oriented team.
Mm-hmm.
These teams that we're seeing that we may eventually see in the playoffs, the Lakers will be equipped for that. And we saw it with Denver. Look at how well we played defense against Denver. All we had to do is put one guy on Jokic and say, look, if you want to go one-on-one with Jokic for 48 minutes, you can go ahead and do that. That's fine. But we're not letting any of these other guys score on us. The Lakers did a great job on Jamal Murray and all the other guys. That's going to be the case, and that's my long monologue about our defense. Could it be better at defending at the rim? For sure. But it's hard to be mad at a team that has the number one rated defense. Is it going to have holes? Is there going to be some flaws with this defense? For sure. But I think it's pretty tremendous that we basically lost a guy like Dwight, who was a menace, in the paint, and JaVale, who was a menace in the paint. And somehow we still are playing excellent defense. Denver hadn't scored 100 points. They were like the number 6 or number 3 hottest offense or something like that when they ran into the Lakers. And we shut them down almost completely. So, and Jokic was almost a no-show with the way that we were defending him. So, you just got to trust Frank Vogel's scheme. And I think the news I think Mike Trudell just posted that Anthony Davis is going to be starting. So, I'll be very curious to see if they start off hot or if he starts off a little rusty or if he's just kind of, going with the flow or facilitating.
Like everybody talks about the rim protection, man, and admittedly, I wish we could have got Dwight back. Like obviously it looks like he was planning to come back and then something must have happened with lines of communication. The buyout market will come and there will probably be some competent, center that we can pick up for situational basketball. We saw it last season. Like these big guys get played off the court. And so Jokic won't get played off the court because he's too important to Denver. But you look at the teams we may have to play, Rudy Gobert is not a threat offensively, but I think you can play him off a little bit as well. The Clippers have Zubac. You can probably play him off as well. And then after that, the Suns, they've got Ayton. I'm not worried about him. Blazers don't really have anybody. Like you look at the Spurs, the Nuggets I already mentioned, but there's nobody that I'm worried about that is a big man. And then when you look at their guards, these guards, man, it's different than what it was in the 90s and early 2000s where these guys were just straight slashers and dunking on everybody. They'd rather pull up for threes and dunk on somebody. That's kind of where basketball is going. And so I'm not so worried about our defensive our rim protection. The one thing I think we miss is the vertical spacing on offense. Like that's the one thing I feel like we miss. And Anthony Davis he's the ultimate rim protector and he's the ultimate vertical spacer. But he's not 100% right. And so that's the one thing. Like if we can get an athletic big that can space the floor vertically, give them back that alley-oop threat that they had all year last year with Dwight and JaVale and AD. I'd love to see that again. But I'm going to keep saying it. Like I'd rather add a wing, a big wing, at 6'8", something like 6'7", 6'8", than another big man, especially considering how the playoffs went last year. There was just no reason to have a big man.
Yeah, and I think one of the concerns is also like just in case there's like an injury to Gasol, if there's an injury to Montrez, or even like what happened with AD, right? Like we're going to be severely shorthanded in the depth. So I understand from that point that folks want I've heard the argument that we should just get one just for the sake of having additional depth in case if something happens. So I do agree from that standpoint that from an injury concern, maybe we should try to add a guy. But the problem is what we always talk about, and it reared its head last game with Markieff. There is a human element to basketball. Not everybody wants to play on a contending team or be part of a team and not play. Like some guys, not everybody's Jared Dudley. Not everybody's Quinn Cook. And the Lakers essentially need, if they're going to add somebody, they need a guy who's willing to do that, because they have guys. I don't want to say that we have like an abundance of talent, but we do have an abundance of capable players and just not enough time for them. Like if Anthony Davis doesn't get hurt, I don't know where we're finding time to put Markieff and West in games. I don't. And like we're going to see it tonight. Caruso's back. Anthony Davis is back. Vogel's already said that we're cutting the minutes or cutting the rotation to 10 people. He's already named Wes Matthews apparently as the 10th guy or whatever part of that rotation. So Markieff's the odd man out unless, and he said it's tentative, so if it's a blowout, I think Markieff gets in the game and stuff like that. But it's not easy to manage that sort of stuff. And then Markieff is a professional, so I don't think that he's going to cause any issues. But there's just a human element to basketball, man. Like we can't add, like people are wanting to add like a young guy, like somebody who's very young and promising. But young and promising players need minutes. They're trying to get that next contract. They want to be the next Christian Wood or the next Jeremy Grant, those kind of guys. Jeremy Grant left Denver, even though he was offered the same money because he wanted a bigger role. You know what I mean? Like, and Denver would be like, you see the way he's playing for Detroit right now. Like these guys would be like crazy good. You know what I mean? So it's there is a human element to basketball that we have to always be aware of. And I say this ad nauseum. Like you just never know. And we know historically because we're older Laker fans, and we know that's what fractured the Laker locker room when the Lakers went for like their fourth trip to the finals with Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, and Gary Payton. What fractured that locker room were egos, people wanting shots, people wanting the ball more, and then the politics between the players and stuff like that happened at the time, and we just can't have that. It's not good for the locker room. But I don't think the Lakers are in that situation. I think it's just going to be finding the right minutes and finding the right situations. And it seems as though Vogel's doing it like on a meritocracy kind of basis. Like if the lineup, like that all forwards lineup was garbage. Like we don't have to like skate around that. It's been a terrible lineup for like 5-6 straight games. Everybody on Lakers Twitter is like, this lineup is trash. Stop using this lineup anymore. And then he changed it, right? He put Caruso and THT in. He put more speed on the floor. And then he even put Kuzma in that lineup too as well. All of a sudden, the Lakers are winning games. And then this last game against OKC, that lineup doesn't do well because THT is struggling. We don't have Caruso. So Frank says, hey, Wes, let's go. He calls Markieff, let's go. And that lineup ends up doing well, or the all-forwards lineup. We closed with it. And I think the only variations we had Dennis Schroeder in the game for some stretch of basketball, I think for Kuzma or something like that. But you just have to be bought into that process. Some nights it's not your nights. It's easy for me and you to say because we don't get paid. What's a veteran minimum? Like $2.7 million. I would love to get paid $2.7 million to be a locker room guy and win championships. But some guys aren't built that way. Some guys they want to play the competitive guys. Markieff and Wes are guys like that. So I trust Vogel and the rest of the team to manage those sort of expectations and whatnot.
Well, and it's easier to keep your veteran guys quiet on the bench and kind of out of the rotation, put them in, take them out when you're trying to get that championship. They got it now. Like they're the defending champs. Keith's got his ring, and so he re-signed knowing that he may be the odd man out at times, but he probably didn't think that he would be out this much, right? And so this is last year the Lakers weren't this deep. This is a consequence of them being so much deeper, and look, they got Schroeder and they got Trez. You bring in 2 6-men, right? Who now one's a starter, but the top 2 6-men in the league. Add them to Anthony Davis and LeBron. You still got to give minutes to Kuz, right? Like you got to give minutes to AC. All of a sudden, THT is way ahead of schedule, and no one saw that coming, right?
Right.
West came there, and many people thought that he was just going to fill the Danny Green role and play as much as Danny, but West isn't playing nearly as much as Danny did. KCP is just Mr. Consistent, so you have to play him. Like, there's only so many minutes to go around, and I see people saying, "Well, add someone like a Deadman." If Deadman's still available at this point, he'll be available if somebody on the Lakers goes down. He'll be available
Probably,
20
yeah,
games from now. They're clearly
yeah.
not adding some of these other guys because they're going to wait for the buyout market. They're going to wait and see what happens. They know who's going to be around and who's not going to be around. So,
Yeah, yeah. I would say like a good indicator of that is a team like the Nets who have been hemorrhaging interior defense. They've had like since they traded for Harden, they've had literally the worst defense in the league.
yep,
Anybody who's watching Nets game, you see them just giving up layups like as if it's a pickup game or something like that. They didn't even get Deadman. Like they signed Norval Pell, and then I think they just recently signed Noah Vonleh. So like
yep.
Deadman's supposed to be at the top of our list, but somehow he's not on the top of a list of the team that actually needs a center.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to say. Like we don't know like kind of what the market is. I understand the complaints about it, but we're only a half game out of the 1 seed, and though our strength may not be like we can't stop everything. It not in the not in 2021 and not in the future. The way the offenses work in the NBA, it is impossible to shut down a team in every single facet of what they want to do. It's not football, right? In football, you can do stuff like that, but you can't do it in basketball. The rules just don't allow stuff like that. There's just too much offensive freedom. When the Lakers were locking down the Heat, Jimmy Butler somehow got like 20 free throws in one game. Like, well, how often do you see that happen in a playoff game? And so that was my thing that like, it's not going to happen. And then we have to look for the positives and then just hope that we improve on the stuff that needs improvement. And I think we will. Mark's not an above the rim guy, but he's got great hands, man. I've seen him, block a couple of shots without even leaving his feet because he's timing the layup shooting path and all that sort of stuff. So just we got to take it. It's the same quality defense, just in a different way. We were complaining last season about getting blown by and Dwight and JaVale having to clean up. And this time we're complaining about on the few blow-bys that we do have, we're not able to defend it with the same thing. So it's a give and take when it comes to it. I think they'll be okay.
They're going to be fine. Like, I'm not getting frustrated this year, man. Like, we got our ring, and not that I want that to be the only one that we get, up around this time, but just the Lakers are fine. Like, what is there? Like, there are things that they're not great at, and that, to your point, like you're not going to stop another team. You're not going to take everything away from them, but to be in the 1 or 2 seed all season long, to be the number 1 defense, have a top offense all year long, no major injuries, like. I think everybody needs to take a step back. And, you and I talk about this a lot, but I want to make sure I keep reminding people who watch and listen to the show, these guys aren't even practicing. Like, they're barely practicing this season. Like, guys, think about that for a second. They added like 5 new dudes to the team, and they barely been able to practice all year long. Like, all of this is film study. Like, if anything, the Lakers are much better than they should be, all things considered. Right? Like, here's a great example of this, man. Like, I'm looking at the standings now. Look how average Denver has looked a good chunk of this season. Yeah. Right? Like, they're the 7th seed right now. They've looked average, right? The Miami Heat's in the 9th seed in the East. Like, these teams that were right there last year, they've looked average. And the Lakers added all these new guys, and they've been the best team in the NBA all year long. So I wouldn't worry about it at all. I'm not... Even if we drop tonight, which I hope we don't, but if we drop a game to the Grizzlies tonight, like that has no bearing on how the rest of the season is going to go. Like, none.
Yeah, I think we part of the fun part of Lakers Twitter, I think, is like making the jokes and slandering our own team, because Laker fans will do it to their own team. Like people really maybe a little bit at the beginning of the season, people didn't really like, they haven't really had a chance to like slander like Kuzma. Like, that was a regular nightly occurrence. Even like getting pissed at like Rondo and like, oh shit, here comes Rondo, we're about to blow like this 7-8 point lead. Like, it's not happening this year. So it's like the stuff that we're complaining about is like, how they say first world problems. These are like first world basketball problems.
Yep.
And so I don't mind people complaining, because I think people and there's nothing wrong with it. You're allowed to want perfection from your team and stuff like that. Every fan has a different way of looking about it. It's just, I think you and I both have the stance of like, look, we're like 98% good defensively, like the
Yep.
2%, like you got to give them a break. It's only, we're not even 30 games into the season, and we know that this team can be much, much better even than they are now. When the playoffs come around and they really get to scheme. That's Vogel's bread and butter, man. He knows how to scheme against some of the best players. Some of the stuff we were doing in Denver when Jokic came to town,
Hmm.
was really good stuff. It was defensive schemes that I have not seen other teams play, and I won't be surprised if other teams copy what the Lakers were trying to do to Jokic, and to that Denver offense moving forward. So it's, you just gotta bear with it. Just enjoy the season, man. It's we haven't even gone into Staples Center yet, so or seen the banner that this team won. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'd remind fans that Philly has been maybe the best team in the East all year long, and Philly was beating us pretty good most of that game we played against them. And when the Lakers turned it on in the fourth quarter, it took a game winner by Tobias Harris to beat us. Like
Yeah,
like it. Philly was great all game, and the Lakers finally turned it on in fourth, and
yeah.
they almost won that game. So I haven't said this in a while, but it bears repeating. The Lakers' margin of error is just, if they're healthy,
It's,
their margin of error is
it's
outlandish.
crazy.
It
Yeah, it's
is.
crazy. I mean, LKC was up 20, and they
Yeah.
erased that over the course of the game. And I mean, we wouldn't have these overtime games if we were, if we came out the gates like even playing some average offense and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But look, they have been home games. We've talked about the Lakers trend at home. It really doesn't seem like they're that Vogel's pressing them too much
Yep.
about their reps and all that sort of stuff. It honestly seems like they spend like the first entire quarter just doing cardio and warming up. And second quarter onwards is where they really, really lock in. They have really good second halves at home,
Mhm.
because I think that's when they're kind of setting they're taking the game seriously and stuff like that. So this is a road game tonight. It is a road game tonight, right? Yeah. It's or no, is it a home game? No, it's a home game tonight. So let's see what happens. If it's a home game tonight, maybe they come out a little slow
Mhm.
in the first quarter, but then they ramp it up again. And it makes sense. Teams that come to LA and play at the Staples Center,
Yep.
like I would expect them to have a lot of energy and burst in the first quarter and gradually wear themselves down as the game goes on. Whereas the Lakers have the opposite trend. So, I don't want to say it's making an excuse. It's just an observation, and it seems like that's what the case is with this team. They're a little bit of a slow starting team when they're at home, but when they're on the road, man, they've been fantastic. They almost never lose on the road. So I could cut them some slack. If it was a consistent pattern, like
Right.
constantly, it would be I would be concerned, but it really isn't. There's clearly a little bit of relaxation happening when they're back home in LA. So I won't get too mad at them about it.
And I would say this: they've been this good so far.
Mm-hmm.
I think we really start judging them after March 3rd, after All Star break and all that stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
assuming they're healthy, that's when I think we'll start to see really what this team can do. And if they've got, a big enough lead in the West, or they're comfortable wherever their seating is at, they're probably going to take a few games off. And LeBron and AD certainly deserve that, and some of the other older
Mm-hmm.
players. And that's to me, that's all that matters. Like, I really try not to get upset anymore. Like, it's just like, okay, well, we're losing. It sucks. We shouldn't be
Yeah.
losing. It shouldn't be an overtime game. But what are you going to do? Like, these guys they're just going through the motions right now.
Yeah, man, it's hard. It's hard to do because as fans, we forget that these guys are, regular dudes that don't
Yeah.
get to spend as much time with their families because of a condensed season and travel and stuff like that and COVID protocol. And they're allowed to, we've always used the example of just you being a regular person. There's sometimes where we have to go and do our jobs, but we
Yep.
really don't want to be there, but we do our jobs. So it's no different when it comes to basketball. They know when it's like go time. Like I would say that every high stakes game, like high like importance game. So like the
Hmm.
Bucks game, the Celtics game, the Sixers game, the Denver game, they've looked good, and I can't complain about that. They've looked good against really, really good teams. That Bucks game, or sorry, not the Bucks game. Yeah, the Bucks game and the Celtics game was a good example of that. Celtics game, we went to Boston last year and we got blown out bad,
Hmm.
and that was a wake up call for us. And we barely beat them when they came back. I think it took the LeBron over Jalen Brown. He had that fadeaway, that fall away fadeaway shot that he made that sealed the game for us. But they took care of business when they went to Boston this time,
Yep.
and that was on the heels of AD like not really playing that great offensively and stuff like that too. And he just kept going to the rim, getting layups and stuff like that. Same thing like you mentioned with the Sixers. Like Embiid was trying to foul bait that entire game, and the refs kept rewarding him. And then in the
He
fourth
shot
quarter, the refs
13
were like,
free
"All right, we're
throws.
not doing this anymore. Yeah, we should." AD shut his water off for the last 6 minutes of that game. We
Yep.
would have won it if not for Tobias game winner. So I think they'll be fine. I think they know when they need to be serious, and I'm not worried. There's no team that I've seen so far that concerns me
Nope.
in the Western Conference. And if Denver was supposed to be the team that was supposed to do it, they're not. And if the Lakers have a dominant performance against the Jazz, then we're gonna have a real conversation about like whether any of these teams are really actually going to be challenging the Lakers when the playoffs come around. So I'll be curious to see what they look like.
I agree with you, man. Guys, we're going to get out of here. Let you guys enjoy the game tonight. Make sure you subscribe to the show on YouTube. Also, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you enjoy your podcast. Let's get this win tonight, and please no overtime. I don't want to be up till 1, 2 in the morning watching this
Yes,
stuff,
I
man.
feel, I feel for the. I always see a few East Coast folks on the timeline. They're like, "Man, I stayed up for this. Like these guys are playing like ass, and then now it's going into overtime." It always cracks me up. But yes, I hope that there's no overtime either. And as always, thanks to all the folks, the regulars
Mhm.
that are in the chat. Good seeing everybody chatting it up. And hopefully we get a good performance. Win or lose, the Lakers will be fine. And hope everybody's doing well and staying healthy and staying safe.
I couldn't have said it better, man. We'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching Lakers Central.